The first technology we'll be looking at is a technology that we've developed at Niantica called SNoDrop. It comes to solve what was considered to be one of the most intractable problems in predictive dialing to date. And the problem relates to the fact that all predictive dialers until today have always been generating abandoned calls. We think that we know we found a way to actually completely eradicate abandoned calls, yet maintain a high performance predictive dialing. How does this work? Uh, well, first of all, let's look at the problem. The problem is that all predictive dialing technologies generate abandoned calls. This is a fact that is well established. However, in many countries, regulations have become stricter and stricter over the years over the amount of abandoned calls that dialers are permitted to deliver. As a result, in order to stay safe from regulation, some organizations have indeed stopped using predictive dialing altogether. Others have reduced their limits on abandoned or dropped calls to what they consider to be a safe limit. In both cases, they have suffered reasonably big drops in productivity, and when you look at the numbers, is anywhere between 25 to 50% drop in productivity, which at the end of the day is a significant hit on the bottom line. So the question is, are abandoned calls or dropped calls an unavoidable fact of life when performing predictive dialing? And until recently, the answer has always been yes. So let's first of all look at why do predictive dialers abandon calls? Well, predictive dialing is a very useful technology. It is proven to double your outbound productivity measured in talk time. So basically, if your outbound talk time is say around 40%, which is not unreasonable when you're not using dialing, using predictive dialing would actually increase that to something like 80%. So it's very useful as a technology. Now, how does it work? It's based on a probabilistic algorithm that predicts pacing of calling over dialing or over calling based on two main things. There's all kind of other considerations, but these are the main two things. One of them being the average call durations of, let's say, 5 minutes, and the other one is the connect rate on the list, and that can be let's say 20%. That means that 1 in 5 calls are actually connected to a person. Some algorithms use some element of machine learning to actually improve over time, to use all kind of averages and figure out as much as possible an accurate probabilistic formula for this over dialing levels. However, any probabilistic algorithm by definition has a margin of error. And in predictive dialing, the margin of error is reflected in the fact that occasionally you would connect, or the dialer will connect, more calls than agents that are available to take them. In that case, the difference will have to be abandoned. This is why all predictive dialers, because of the algorithm, will generate abandoned calls. Well-behaved dialers will allow a message to be played before calls are abandoned. So it's not a silent call, but it is an abandoned call. There's a big difference between the two. Abandoned calls actually carry a message saying, we tried to call you today, we'll try again later. So, let's introduce SNoDrop. So with SNoDrop, dropped calls or abandoned calls are avoided. So the abandoned call rate is 0%. So how does it work? The method works by combining techniques which borrow from blending, call blending, inbound, outbound call blending. And let me explain, first of all, how one method of blending that we're using here works. The way it works is that you have three types of teams, agent teams: inbound teams, outbound teams, or blended teams. In a blended team, you can define a number, n, and that is the number of agents that ideally you would like available at all times to handle inbound calls. The number of actually available inbound agents, let's call that I, is checked several times every second. And if the two numbers are equal, basically the number of agents that you want to have available at any time and the number you actually have available at that time are equal, then do nothing. You're fine. If I is less than n, that means you've got fewer agents available than you would like to, then the blender mechanism will ask the dialer to release an agent or more for inbound duties. And the dialer will either release agents that are currently available or release them as they become available. If I becomes larger than n, meaning that the number of available inbound agents is larger than the number you ideally would want, then the blender mechanism will release them back to the dialer to allow them to handle outbound calls. Now, we have a refinement of this because we don't actually want agents that are waiting for inbound calls to sit there waiting for long periods of time. So we've introduced an element of rotation in this. So whenever an outbound agent finishes a call, they become the duty inbound agent, and the agent has been waiting goes back to outbound. So they're only on duty for short periods of time as waiting inbound agents. So this is, up to now, it's only to do with inbound-outbound blending. So what does this have to do with abandoned calls? Well, we're using this mechanism in a different way. So if you look at this diagram, what you see here is that we basically have two teams. We have a team that is purely outbound. We have a team that is blended in the manner that we explained earlier. And it has a number n, number of desired agents available at all times for inbound, set to n. Now, n is usually equal or greater than 1. On average, we expect n to be an additional 1 for every 30 agents. So let's say if you've got a team of 30, then n is 1. If you've got a team of 60, it will be 2. If you have a team of 90, it will be 3. So we've set all this up, and the dialer quite happily dials away. We also set up a dummy inbound queue. So that inbound queue is not a genuine inbound queue. There are no inbound calls going in there. It's called the SNoDrop inbound queue. And that queue is linked to the blended team as an inbound conduit channel. So what happens is that as the dialer carries on dialing quite happily, it will occasionally need to abandon a call or two. And when it needs to do that, instead of abandoning the call, it will actually place it into the SNoDrop inbound queue. We know that there is a guaranteed agent waiting there for that to happen. Therefore, the call is not abandoned but handled by that agent. When that agent is handling the call, then the blending mechanism will ask for another agent to be freed to become the waiting agent. In this way, we can do full speed, full power predictive dialing without abandoning calls at all. So, does it really work? Well, we have conclusive evidence that it works extremely well. These are figures from one of our clients, quite a large call center, over 500 agent positions. These figures were taken the beginning or the first half of 2017, so that's about 3 years ago, which has been technology that's been used quite widely since then. So what we can see here, for example, this is the abandoned call rate, and you can see as it drops down as SNoDrop is being introduced. And this is the number of dials. So you would expect that the number of dials would drop. Instead, the number of dials has actually remained the same. So basically, the dialer is as effective in dialing. It just the number of abandoned calls has dropped. Same number of agent. In addition to that, if we looked at the average wait time between calls for agents, you would think that because you've got these agents waiting for inbound or abandoned call to be handled, that the wait time will be longer. In fact, the wait time is dropped. So you can see as the nuisance rate drops to zero, the abandoned call rate drops to zero, the actual wait time has dropped from 28 seconds to 18 seconds. So not only the technology prevents abandoned calls being generated, it also makes the contact center even more efficient. To summarize this technology, it was launched at the beginning, first quarter of 2017. It's currently in full production in more than two now, in several leading outsourcers in the UK and outside the UK. One of our clients, Rescue, were the first large contact center to deploy this technology, and as a result, on the 4th of May 2017, they became the first contact center worldwide to dial predictively at scale and not abandon a single customer call across their entire estate of many hundreds of agents. So that is our first technology called SNoDrop.